Very much, Mr. Chairman. So I want to put this in a context beyond Mr. Chipman. I led the effort for the last ATF director that actually got confirmed. You have to go back nearly 20 years, we've had one. He was from Minnesota. So during the time of Donald Trump, we had no confirmed ATF director. So I don't think this is just about Mr. Chipman. I think this is about the NRA. I think it's about people not wanting to hurt themselves and get some kind of points off or a B grade instead of an A grade. That's what I think this is about. Because when I did this back a few years back, it was toward the end of President Obama's term. The guy's name is Todd Jones. He was a decorated Marine. He was the US attorney. And I had to work all day one day just to get him through on a cloture vote. He was the acting US attorney. He was the US attorney, but he was also the acting ATF director, had not been in any scandals, had done a good job by all accounts when he was there, having inherited an agency that had some issues. But I got finally, after I think it was 8 hours we left the vote open. I got 6 Republicans to vote with me. 2 of them are still here, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. One of them was John McCain. You want to question his views on guns? I don't think so. So I think what this is about the NRA. David Chipman, he has spent his career working to keep the American people safe. He served at the ATF for almost 25 years, more than half of the agency's existence as a special agent, field office manager, and chief of the firearms program divisions. If confirmed, he would actually be the first director to have served as an ATF special agent. So to say this is just some political appointment when it's actually the first guy that would have worked there for a long time, I think that's wrong. A lifelong gun owner, Mr. Chipman knows that responsible gun ownership and common sense safety measures go hand in hand, and his approach to gun violence stems from his belief that it is possible to balance rights and responsibilities. For many years, I have led the bill, common sense legislation, to close a dangerous loophole that allows domestic abusers to buy a gun simply when they're not married to the victims, but in fact are their boyfriends. We had a hearing on this many, many years ago, and Senator Grassley had several witnesses, very conservative witnesses, a conservative sheriff. And while they did not agree with the stalking portion of the bill, they actually agreed with closing this loophole, full stop, every single one of them. Yet, we can't even seem to get that done because of the NRA. Mr. Chipman's nomination has the support of numerous organizations, including the Hispanic American Police Command Officers Association, the Police Executive Research Forum, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, and 17 current state attorney generals. His decades of experience in law enforcement make him exactly the right nominee for this critical position. And when I asked him, as ATF director, would he take on this small issue of closing this loophole that the Republican witnesses support, he said it would be one of his top priorities to get this done if he was confirmed as ATF director. So I don't think we can just look at this nominee on some isolated island. This is a part of a whole effort, and it's political. He's not political. How we've handled the ATF has been political. Or we would have had a director under Donald Trump. We would have had a director confirmed under President Obama, and I wouldn't have had a cloture vote held open for 8 hours for a decorated Marine just to be able to have him be the only person confirmed as head of the ATF, the only person in 20 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Klobuchar.
That for the record. Now, Senator Klobuchar, if you have any evidence that I'm voting against this gentleman, and I say this gently because I'm worried about the NRA or losing points on the NRA, I'd like to hear it.
I have the evidence that we have not confirmed an ATF director during this entire last 2 decades, except for one, and I was directly told as I tried to get votes to get cloture by Republicans that they were concerned about how the NRA would rank.
But I'm asking about this Republican.
That is my evidence of
I'm
what's
asking
happened.
about this Republican.
I can't get inside your brain or know your politics. I'm just saying in general, there is more evidence besides this one man about what's going on in our legislative efforts, what's going on in Congress, why we haven't been able to pass even common sense background checks when 90% of the American people support them. So I think this is much bigger than one guy. I just thought that point should be made.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And
Thank you.
by the way, even President Trump's nominee was too because of concerns by Republicans on the gun issue. So it just never ends.
Thank you, Mr.
Much, Mr. Chairman. I wholeheartedly agree with Senator Cornyn's comments. Also a former prosecutor. I had the experience early on where we had, and this isn't TVs, but it's the same concept of accountability. We had child protection cases, which are not the ones you'd put on TV, and no one was allowed in the courtroom. And the cases were building up and kids were just left with no future possibility of being adopted from foster care. And finally, we changed the rules to allow a nonprofit group in with red clipboards. I still remember it. So they could start tracking exactly what happened. And it changed everything because there was accountability and people were watching. I believe the same thing is true for regular courtrooms when it comes to TV. And I had the same reaction as Senator Cornyn about the OJ trial and horrified by what that came out as. However, I have another experience recently, and that is the prosecution of Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis. The whole country was able to see those witnesses, was able to see the hell they had gone through for the last year where they felt the burden of could they have done more. And I thought that was a moment of redemption, not entirely redemption for everything that happened and changes that need to be made. And I so appreciate the work that Senator Booker and Senator Scott are engaged in right now. But it was a moment of redemption in part because people could see their fellow citizens talk about what happened, see the police chief of Minneapolis testify, as well as so many other incredible police officers who came forward to talk about what happened. If that hadn't been televised, the verdict would have probably been the same, but people wouldn't have been able to see that and share in that moment, really collective moment of redemption. So right now, all 50 states currently allow some form of media access to state courtrooms, as Senator Cornyn has pointed out, in some capacity. And unfortunately, the same can't be said about federal court proceedings. And there's pretty important cases that happen in federal court. And I also want to note, to get at some of the concerns I think both he and I have shared, and I know Senator Grassley, who's led on this for so long, have shared, as well as Senator Durbin. The bill actually provides safeguards for jurors, for witnesses, and the parties involved. The bill prohibits the broadcasting of any juror during a trial or during the jury selection process. The bill also provides judges discretion to obscure the identities of witnesses who testify, very important. And the bill prevents the presiding judge from allowing media coverage entirely. The judge does not have to allow for that coverage if doing so would violate the due process rights of parties involved. I think that's important. The judge in the Chauvin case had to make a major decision about that, and he made the right one. But he did have the right to not have that on TV and decided to allow it. Our bill allows for that kind of discretion for judges. Thank you. I do appreciate the sentiment of Senator Cruz's remarks here, but just to be clear, so what I know is, and I've talked to Justice Roberts about this, is that he did start putting audios out more regularly, which was a good development. And so all you're trying to say is he would have to do it the same day, which they often do now, I believe, on big arguments, or they have done. But my point is, we're still in a situation where only a couple hundred lucky people get to go into that courtroom, including a number of senators that have gone to watch oral arguments. But the rest of America can't see them. To me, this is some archaic procedure that came out of the horse and buggy days where a few people could come and watch. And I don't understand why just those couple hundred people get to see and why you wouldn't have everyone seeing. But I do appreciate the audio versions that have been made available by the court. I appreciate the sentiment that you want them done, asking them be done right away, but I just don't think this gets us to where we need to go.
Mr. Chairman.